Greetings! This week we are joined at the Cantina by Kwame Mbalia, who is the author of Star Wars The Last Order and Fortuna Favors the Bold from the Return of the Jedi from a Certain Point of View. We talk in depth about the inner workings of the First Order, Star Wars fandom, the deeper motivations of Jannah and Finn, and much, much more. Pull up a seat and listen to us talk with one of the great makers. Let's go! Welcome to another week of Cantina Chronicles. For those just joining us, this is a weekly Cantina crawl across the Star Wars galaxy where we have delightful discourse about all things Star Wars, including news, notes, and theory, synthesizing all media. We contextualize your canon. We're your landing pad for all things Star Wars. Grab a seat and let's chop it up. Today, special day this week, we are hanging out with a new friend at the Cantina, New York Times best-selling author of the acclaimed Tristan Strong series, publisher, and author of the Star Wars novel, Star Wars The Last Order, and from a certain point of view, Return of the Jedi, the chapter titled Fortuna Favors the Bold. Good people of the Cantina, we are with Kwame Mbalia. Kwame, how's it going, man?
I am incredibly happy to be here. Love whenever we can title drop one of my favorite titles of all time that I came up with. Fortuna Favors the Bold. Awesome. I think I had the title before. As soon as they approached me, I was like, "Bib Fortuna, Fortuna Favors the Bold." I have no idea what the story is going to be about, but that title is staying. And if I have to just submit the title, well, that's just what I'm doing. So I'm happy to be here.
That is so great. I mean, since you brought it up, I think maybe we can kind of start there. We have a fun game we're going to pivot into and do something, but you brought up Fortuna Favors the Bold. So can you tell us how the stories get distributed? You said, like, I've heard this sort of story before, like I had this idea, I brought it to them and they're like, yes. Is that kind of it? Or they're like, I mean, they span the whole movie. You know, there's been 3 of these novels. Did you bring it to them or did they tap you and they're like, was there anything you wanted to write?
Well, so I think for the for the anthologies, from a certain point of view anthologies, you know, they know, hey, we're going to do Return of the Jedi, we're going to do this movie, we're going to do that movie, and we need some contributors. So they sort of reach out to people from across. I think the authorial timeline from different genres, different age limits. You know, I'm coming primarily from Kid Lit, and they've had adult writers as well. So they kind of get a broad array of contributors and ask if we're interested. And then it's sort of like, hey, you know, if I remember correctly, it's like sort of a free-for-all, first come, first served. Hey, what character do you want? And they like, if I'm recalling correctly, they're like, hey, you can't have this character, you can't have this character. You know, they kind of, and then you have to go in and sort of find, in my opinion, you find like those unique, like the whole idea is you know, having that unique point of view into the Star Wars universe, and you try and get as, I feel like there's almost this unspoken competition to get as unique as possible.
Love that.
I can't remember who did the Sarlacc pit. Someone did, you know,
right. It was all about the Sarlacc's point of view. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, or the security droid POV, you know. Yeah. And so you try and get really unique, which I think is part of the fun, part of the draw, is one of, I love stories that you know the main gist of how the story unfolds, but you get to see it from different perspectives. I love when authors, you know, play around like that. So being able to contribute to something that has that at its centerpiece was just really, really fun. And I think I had just rewatched, was it Boba Fett?
Yeah, I think you did. I was going to ask you about this because your story really
same. I had some
synergizes with
questions,
Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, I want to say I had just, if not, I pretty recently had finished, the Book of Boba Fett, right? And love that series, and I am an author. I'm a writer and a reader, and so sometimes those juggling those hats, like it can be annoying. Like you're watching something and you're like, oh, I think I know where this is going, and it's great when you're wrong. And you're like, oh, I didn't expect that. That's wonderful. But when you're right, it's like, writer Kwame, just shut up sometimes. Like, oh my gosh, like let me be the consumer. Let me enjoy this and be surprised. But I remember I had finished the Book of Boba Fett, and I was like, and then I went back and watched Return of the Jedi, where they're at the Sarlacc pit, and I was like, you never see Bib Fortuna, you never see what happens to him, but then until he reappears in Boba Fett,
Right?
and I'm like, okay, there's that pocket that I love where you're like, there's a story here that needs to be explained, and I love when I find that it's like, I call it like you're stretching out an accordion and you find the creases, and you build the stories within the creases. I love finding those. And I was like, man, this is too interesting. How did Bib Fortuna, become, the slumlord? What was his rise to power or whatever? And so I also love sort of like dark humor. So as I'm writing the story, I'm like, Bib hates his boss. Bib hates his boss so much,
Yeah.
And I was like, what if one day, he's like, oh gosh, I wish my boss would just drop dead. And then
you know it.
And then you go into work and your boss drops dead, and you're like, well, what now? What would that look like? And so that's really how that story came about. And I find that to bring in a sports analogy, you never know when you're going to get called off the bench. The pinch hit, you got to be ready. To hit that game-winning 3, you got to be ready. Mm-hmm. I feel like for writers, you have to be able to recognize a story when it's there, or how to build it when you see that opportunity, because that's where a lot of great stories come from. Is you like, hey, this is an opportunity to tell something different and really lean into this uniqueness. And I think that's what Fortuna Favors the Bold does. It's like, I laughed so hard while writing that story.
Good. I laughed reading it.
Yeah. It just, I think Star Wars, they sometimes do it. I really wish there was like adult version of like The Office set in Star Wars, the Star Wars universe, because I think that would be hilarious.
The Bureau of Standards.
Yeah, just mismanaging bureaucracy. Horrible bosses. Tedious jobs. I don't know what it would look like in the universe, but I'm sure it'd be, fantastic. And so I had a lot of fun writing Fortuna Favors the Bold in that sort of style.
No, that was a really, really funny story in the From a Certain Point of View book. That was, I was laughing out loud reading it. So it's funny that you were laughing writing it.
Yeah. I love the banality of Bib's life. It's like, prepare amphibious livestock to be casually eaten alive, stock the pleasure barge for the execution, talking about Luke Skywalker as a pasty human wizard.
We weren't sure. I remember, so, there's a couple editors. You have your book editor, and you have like the Star Wars story group editors to make sure things are in canon. I remember I think Tom was my editor, and I think Tom sort of flagged, I called him a Luke, a pasty sand wizard. And I think Tom flagged it. It was like, I don't know, if this will slide. And then I remember it went to the story group editor, and we just had in the comments, and I was like, well, that's all right. They like that one. Because again, you just have to think of these things from a different point of view. Like, on one side, Luke is a fantastic, powerful, wonderful hero. On the other side, he's so annoying. Like he shows up at the worst time and just disrupts everything. Like, I just refueled that barge and now it's exploded. And if I'm going to take over, I got to get a new barge now. Or what the insurance rates of that barge are going to go up are going to be astronomical, right? Ridiculous.
He strolls in there with so much pomp and circumstance and making demands. I'm sure Bib, had a few internal thoughts about Luke in that moment.
Yeah, ruining a party.
I just know like the animal handling license for the Rancor was just like such a pain to go through. And then he died in their care. And he's like, this is, now we're going to have Rancor rights groups, protest. It's going to be terrible,
Be terrible. Yeah. I think Chuck Wendig actually got to write about that handler in detail in Aftermath, which is fun.
Yeah.
Would you be up for a little game?
Absolutely.
I feel like I had to talk about that story because it's great. And it's nice to hear that backstory, but we have a little game prepared for you. I guess I'll do it. So we call this Hyperspace Hot Takes. That's a work in progress. So if you got a better name, we're open for it. But it's just like a little icebreaker. We'll try to spend like a half a minute per question. Quick responses.
Oh, that's going to be tough. Okay.
Yeah.
Hyperspace preferences doesn't sound as good. I think Hyperspace Hot Takes we were doing a lot of alliteration back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember Kyber Crystal Comics Corner?
Yeah.
Still my favorite.
Yeah, we subject all our interviewees to this, and it's fun for us at least. So it'll be quick, no pressure. You can always say pass, but we'll just try to keep it, tight. So are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, let's go. We're just shooting through these. Okay, and this is personal preference: X-wing or TIE fighter?
TIE fighter.
Love that.
I like the sound.
I love that.
Yes, the sound is undefeated. Blaster or lightsaber?
I'm going to go blaster because I feel like I'm leaning into a pattern here, but I am incredibly clumsy.
Yes.
And I can just see just all of the little scorch marks as I'm trying to,
Yeah, it's funny. Like when I was a kid, I was like, oh, I would be flawless with this thing. And as an adult, I'm like, I would cut off a limb instantly. If
I picked up a Razor scooter the other day, the one that kind of swirls around and just rammed it to my ankle.
Yep.
I was like, this is, I wouldn't be good. I wouldn't be good.
Those are dangerous.
Yep. Imagine if that was a laser scooter.
Yeah.
Jedi or Sith?
Jedi. I don't. Yeah. I don't know if we're doing. Was it the rule of two or the? That's two. That's. I want to be alone. I want to go meditate somewhere. I don't need a apprentice.
Right. That's the other side of the coin of the rule of two is you always have someone there with you, and it's
always.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Really good answer. Favorite color lightsaber?
Purple.
Yeah. Good one. Who would you want to teach you the ways of the Force? We gave you no preparation for these.
Wow. So original Yoda as we know him now, or Yoda when Luke first found him? The sort of kind of weird, annoying Yoda. Because I was going to say Yoda, but I was like, wait a minute,
you can be specific.
Specific time period Yoda.
Yeah, you can narrow it down. Which is your favorite Yoda?
I like, sort of, what? I like, oh my gosh, Clone Trooper Yoda. When he was,
killing the clone troopers?
When he was leading the clone troopers.
Yeah. Leading the clone troopers.
Yeah. Clone Wars era Yoda. I like that.
Clone Wars era Yoda.
Around the something perimeter make? No, it's the line. Sorry.
Yes.
Exactly. Around the survivors of perimeter make or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. If you had all the films laid out in front of you right now, which one would you watch? Just right now.
Watch, you said?
Yeah.
Oh, always Rogue One.
Yes. Yeah. It's a great one. I'm sure you enjoyed Andor too.
Love Andor. Have not. I'm saving it to where I can binge it. Have not seen season 2.
Okay.
Have not started season 2. I need uninterrupted moments.
Yeah.
And I haven't had that because the kids have been home, but we're getting close.
And it is meant to be binged the way they release those. Like, just like, was it four movies? It's great. Yeah.
You're in for a treat.
So much fun.
Yeah. It got me through the beginning of 2025. And yes. So, and also, I just love the tonal shift in like Rogue One from the other films as well. That one always stands out where I'm like, oh, that's a fun, fresh ride to do. Okay. What is your favorite aspect of Star Wars? The Force, the warfare, politics? Do you have a favorite flavor of Star Wars?
I'm a big politics person. I'm a big like fictional, well-written fictional politics. I love diving into those factions, betrayals, all of that. And so, which is again another reason why I loved Andor, really getting to delve into some of that. So I'm gonna go politics.
Love that. In your eyes, who is the best pilot to ever grace the galaxy? Got a lot to choose from.
Poe was not a Jedi.
He was not.
Poe was not a Jedi. I feel like when we talk about pilots, we forget about that sometimes with Anakin. Anakin being a great pilot, Luke's a great pilot, Anakin being a great pilot. They're Jedi though, and they have that sort of attunement. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really, really wild comparison. But you talk about Jordan having Pippin and Rodman and get in the championships. And then we overlook someone like a Dirk Nowitzki who dragged the Dallas Mavericks team over LeBron, Bosh, and Wade to get their. So it's like I like saying, and it's not recency bias because I like saying Poe because he's just a regular, just human doing it. Yeah. That's quite a long. And I'm sure there's other pilots in other shows that I'm like not. Thinking about, but I feel like we come to Poe and we come to Anakin, and I feel like Anakin is by far like he's a better pilot, but also he was a Jedi, and I wonder, is there any sort of handicap that we attribute there or to Poe for not being a Jedi?
It's performance enhancing. I think the Force is performance enhancing. That's a good qualifier.
BB-8 too, which is an incredible co-pilot.
Yeah.
So
I remember talking about this way back when, right? Because it was similar, Kwame. We were talking about the fact that, like, basically the end of episode 7, he basically does what Luke does, right? Destroys a Death Star without the Force, right? So I think there's something to be said for that, for sure. It's also the parallels with Wedge, too, a little bit.
Yeah. And I'm sure you had Poe knocking around your brain for quite some time, so he's probably right there. Okay, just like 25 more questions, and then we'll be good here.
I like this.
There's not 25 more. There's no way.
Yeah, this is a full SAT worth of questions here. Favorite planet?
Favorite planet? And
you got to create some planets too, which must have been cool.
I mentioned this in the last order. We talk about the type of the idea of a city planet, which if I remember correctly, it's called a ecumenopolis, if I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah.
The idea of one city that takes up the whole planet, which, Coruscant, I love that. There's so much there, there's so much happening, so much potential, so much variety, so much street food. So I think I lean there. That, and then a close second is Tano Akora from The Last Order, which is the storm planet that our heroes land on briefly for an adventure. I just love the idea of storm planets, just constant weather patterns, not Hoth though. I'm done with ice. I can't do anymore. I'm finished.
Yeah, it's a little too close to home right now. Yeah, Kamino's my favorite planet. I'm just sort of like ocean waves and rain. I don't know. It seems cozy all the time. Probably not as much street food, though.
That's true.
R2 or 3PO?
That's, oh my gosh. The yapper in me is going to say 3PO. I feel like we'd have some. 3PO gets such a raw deal. You know, he's the annoying, scaredy droid. You know what I mean? But he gets such a raw deal. I feel like 3PO and I would have some good conversations, you know, just while we're drifting through hyperspace. If you have the time, I mean, he knows everything about it. I can just imagine the stats that he would pull up, you know, on like just different random obscure sports. We would have such great debates. I feel like, so I'm going 3PO.
Right. Yeah. How many rebounds in 1991 did Rodman have? And he'd be like, well. Yeah, you could chop it up with C-3PO forever.
In whatever language you want to. It's wonderful.
Yeah, that too. An instant translator. Just not the Sith language. Anakin or Vader?
Vader.
Yeah.
Comics Vader. I don't know if I could be that specific, but from the Vader comic, absolutely. By far, 10 out of 10. I think I'm surrounded by fear and dead men. That's with like comics Vader, I think by far.
That Chuck Wendig one-off, that was incredible. Yeah, Vader just laying waste, and it was crazy. And then the Soul Run is incredible too.
That panel still sort of reverberates through the internet pretty well. All right, I'm going to give you one more, and we'll wrap up this segment here. But favorite bounty hunter?
What's the I think it begins with a C. He wears the cowboy hat.
Cad Bane. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Big fan.
I think. Yeah. The kid show. I call them kid shows. The animated shows did such a wonderful job expanding the universe. Like between, you know, Bad Batch, you know, Clone, or like all of that, like so many great explorations of minor characters who don't, you know, make any, you know, appearance in any of the movies or anything. Just really legendary. I think they sort of picked up where like the books, you know, paved the way of creating these characters that we could latch onto beyond, you know, our favorites. And I'm gonna backtrack to your Vader question, because it piggybacks on this sentiment as well, where like, you know, Vader, we get the prequel trilogy, you know, to explore more of how Vader became who he is, because Vader is probably one of the best characters ever created. You know, when I'm doing school visits and I'm talking to kids and I'm talking about storytelling, I was like, if you hear someone breathe and you know who that character is, that's a great character that you have created. But you know, it's to the point now where in the movies, you know, we see some of Vader's power and we understand that, but it gets we get such a better picture of it, you know, in the games, in, you know, Jedi Fallen Order and everything, when we just see how powerful he is to kind of fight and go up against, in the shows and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, like being able to see this character continue to be fleshed out, it's just the sign of just a really, really powerful, really well done storytelling arc for a character who died 40 years ago, you know, and we're still building their backstory out. That's just, I'm just always amazed at that.
Yeah, I think, you know, Filoni, we talk about a lot on the show, and, you know, recently we've been talking a lot about him, and now he's going to be, you know, heading up Lucasfilm, and it's really exciting. But he, you know, he definitely knows Star Wars. He knew George, obviously, but he's not afraid to take big swings, and he did that with Rebels, with Bad Batch, and Clone Wars and all that. So it's really exciting stuff to come there. All right, we've been here for like 20 minutes. We should probably talk about your book and your contribution. Thank you for your patience. And
no, we're just geeking out, man. This is fun.
Fantastic answers, by the way. Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah. So you just started publishing books 6 years ago. I've seen this. I've heard you say it, but still, it's hard to believe that's true. So what has this rocket ride to New York Times best-selling author been like for you? So how's it changed your life?
Oh, a lot of imposter syndrome, feeling like, man, did I earn this? My because that's my very first book, my debut novel, bestseller, Coretta Scott King author honor or whatever. So it's like, you start here and you're like, all right, is this it? Is this the peak? Is this the pinnacle? Is everything just downhill from there? And I've just been really fortunate to work with a lot of great people, have a lot of great people as mentors. I think my favorite part about it is, because I'm a kid-lit author, is being able to go into schools and do school visits and talk to, students the way that we're talking now, talking about storytelling and making it relatable, because a lot of their experiences with writing and reading are the homework assignments and class assignments that they have to do, for a grade, and being able to show how they can be creative storytellers using my work, using video games, using anime, using comic books, all these things that felt like anathema to talk about when we were growing up as, legitimate avenues of storytelling, let alone a career, being able to talk with them about that and get them excited about reading and literacy in general. I think that's when I keep that in front of me as I'm writing, as I'm working, as I'm trying to do, create more stories, it helps put things into, perspective. Because it's just me in my messy office, doing this, like a little goblin in the cave, emerging from light every so often to fish before I scurry back in the cover of darkness, hissing at sunlight. So I need that occasional reminder and the occasional human interaction of what's important. And I think that for me, that's the most important thing about writing, is recognizing who is at the receiving end, who is the audience, who are the intended readers for my books, thinking about them as I'm writing, and then, reinforcing that as I go out into the world to speak with them.
Excellent. That's really
cool.
fun.
It's very Jedi-like.
Yeah. Can I build on that for a second or ask a question? This is going to be about me for a second, but my daughter's in kindergarten, and so I volunteer at the library on Fridays, and it's my first year doing it, and it's amazing. But one of the things I was kind of blown away with is just how much kids still love to read and how excited they are to be at the library and like get books. It's really heartwarming because I'm a big reader, and so is my wife. And so, like, were you surprised at all, or did you kind of experience that as well? This idea of like this
I'm a big library person. We're 10 toes down for libraries over here. I grew up as a big, so my mother was a English professor. She's a writer. She co-wrote an English textbook. She's the one that really got me into both writing and reading. Every Friday she would pick us up from school and take us to the local library. We could check out as many books as we wanted. And libraries have always been like sort of safe spaces for me, being able to just sort of retreat there into a book, into the familiarity and the comfort of high fantasy, science fiction, or what have you. And so, I try to do as many events with libraries as possible. Librarians are just wonderful people. And being able to partner with them. So like I came out with my first picture book last year. And so being able to do story times and get kids, excited about reading, character dress up, watch them scurry off like tiny little mice to like pick out their own little books or whatever. Like there's still a sense of wonder when you see a kid go into the library and realize that all of that is available to them for free. And so it's just a wonderful experience. I haven't been to the library it's frozen outside. That's why I haven't been.
Yeah. Someone's got to go shovel off their walkway or something. Yeah.
Take care of all that ice. Yeah.
Yeah. We can't even walk a block away. That's really great, man. I was wondering, so like when The Last Order popped up on my feed, I was instantly intrigued. One, because was content that takes place after the Rise of Skywalker, which I know the three of us are, hungry for. But also because your name was new to me, and Lucasfilm has been on a heater bringing in new writers. How big of a deal was it for you to get tapped to do this book?
Oh, listen, amazing. Like, I don't know. There's really no, like, I'm a writer. There's no real word for the emotion. You know what I mean? To be a huge Star Wars fan and then being asked to create something within the galaxy is just, I mean, I went to American Librarian Association annual conference in San Diego like a couple years ago, and had a day where I wasn't doing anything, and so made the drive up to Anaheim to go to Disneyland. And I was just in the Galaxy's Edge portion of Disneyland. Didn't have my kids with me. Normally when we go to Disney World, they're with me. We got to do what they want to do. We're doing princess visits, we're doing the Winnie the Pooh ride, we're doing those sorts of things. But it was just me. It was just me. And I spent, I don't know how many hours just in Galaxy's Edge, just surrounded by like the sounds, the engines going by, speeders. I had a couple Ronto burgers.
Yes.
I'm doing the lightsaber experience. We're in the Millennium Falcon. I remember sitting there. And I was like just taking notes on just like the ambiance. I remember, I can check my camera roll. I remember, there's a little section where they just have a bunch of droids outside of a workshop. And it's just a set. And I just remember standing there, and I took so many pictures of just I took pictures of the trash cans.
Yeah.
Because I was like, this is, absolutely, and I'm taking notes. And so, and to be immersed in that, to be able to work with characters that I grew up watching, binging, or watching the TNT marathon of, the original trilogy, or during Christmas time when I'm on break, or going into Blockbuster Video and seeing, Adam, I don't know if your parents had the movie poster up on the wall. I remember going into Blockbuster Video as a kid and seeing that poster for the first time and being like, whoa, what is that? To be able to write within that universe, it's to say a dream come true feels like really cheap. You know what I mean? It's a bucket list opportunity, a bucket list goal. And, I love it. I treasure it. I think about it. I reread it. I'm like, man, this is great. This author's pretty cool. I don't know how they.
This author is pretty cool. Yeah. You're great.
It's kind of the foundational text for the culture and sort of tactics of the First Order, which we kind of didn't really know about the faction. They were very amorphous until your book, and now it's like, I will reread your book a few times just to really lock in what it is to be a part of the First Order, how the regime operates,
and the brainwashing,
sort of the indoctrination techniques. There's so much in there that is so cool that you got to create. That is now in my mind, it's etched in my mind. It's like, oh, I want to learn this about the First Order. Let me go grab the Last Order because there's a lot in there about them.
And that's synthesizing a lot of work that others have created, that's like digging into the
like Phasma, Dylas Dawson, right? There's
Phasma, the
Galaxy's Edge
I would say Before the Awakening, the trio of short stories
with Finn. Yeah.
Oh, right.
There's some comics. There are I'm delving into, I remember researching the origin of the First Order, tracing back, who's funneling, money to who to create these groups, and going into, I think,
Bloodlines.
Bloodlines. Leia's bloodline story. Watching Rebels. For how, that, I'm blanking on his name, but the the one who laid the foundation for the indoctrination of the kidnapped kids for the First Order. He's the
like Brendel Hux or something.
Yeah, Hux. Yeah, the original Hux, and how he laid like it's compiling all of that, and which is fun in and of itself. It feels like I'm doing deep historical research into the archives. You know what I mean?
That's so cool.
And pulling that together just for a couple scenes here, a couple scenes there. I think my favorite contribution would be, letting you all see the mantras, that they hear consistently, sort of re-indoctrinating themselves every time they listen to it, to remind them like there's no I, there's no you, it's just the First Order.
Yeah.
Right.
One of my favorite things in Star Wars is when someone breaks my headcanon, if that makes sense. And so when I, thinking about to just, episode 7, and they talk about, right, these brainwashed kids, and my mind went sci-fi. Like they were literally like putting them in places and washing their brains. And I just love reading your book, and others' work had kind of, hinted this as well, but just the idea of like, no, it's just indoctrination. We've been doing this as humans forever, and it will continue on. And I don't know, blew me away. And it was very
those flashbacks were just as harrowing and dramatic and tonally complex as like Andor. I could almost see a Prestige series in those flashback chapters with Jannah and Finn and their disparate experiences, but similar experiences, but just so much going on in there that was tense and really, the stakes were ratcheting up, and it just felt like and the brainwashing, and the mantras again were so cool. The you is dead, the I is discarded, you are nothing. All that sort of stuff was so cool, and really made them more menacing. I thought the First Order, they almost feel like stand-ins or remnant Imperial when you watch the sequel trilogy, but your book, I think, added a level of menace to them that was really interesting.
They're the galactic gaslighters, I like to call them, where it's just continually, a continual indoctrination, continual gaslighting, to young people, formative young people, and this is all they know, and all they have grown up with, and there's a psychology behind it. As you think about how something could be accomplished on this scale without some sort of science fictional, mechanism, device, right. You know what I mean? There are loads and loads and layers of, like the First Order has to have, thousands of psychologists on their payroll in order to make something like this happen. You know what I mean? And it's one thing if you're like force control, using the force to make someone, do Jedi mind tricks, right? This is good old, like I said, this is good old fashioned human lying.
Right.
Yeah. Human lying. That's
sort of a sense of unity, but it's a false sense of unity.
Yes.
And they make chaos the enemy, which is sort of this, broad, villain that they can convince the youth to sort of believe in.
Yeah. And they're raised, and a lot of, your characters are in the First Order for the right reasons, thinking they're going to do the right thing.
Right.
And then they have to find out for themselves through their own like veil of whatever that they're not the good guys. And it's a really fun ride, and all the characters and points of view that we get there, it really spells that out in a beautiful way. Jannah, you did a fantastic job with, and it was and we got so much more about her character, and now we want so much more there. One fun thing that you had in there is you had Captain Phasma as her mentor. Why did you decide to make that connection between those two characters, and what is that saying about Jannah and about Phasma?
Phasma strikes me as the type of character, from the what was written before and sort of like extrapolating out, who would have their own units loyal to her. You know what I mean? Like someone who recognizes the First Order for what it is, doesn't buy into the mantras the way that the indoctrinated would, but recognizes how useful it is, how it plays to her strengths, and understands that, I need people who are loyal to me, not to the cause. And so she's looking for people of immense talent, of someone who's not just strong, but can be loyal, but also free thinking, if that makes sense. Like an agent of theirs who's loyal to them, but is able to go off on their own and accomplish these things. Originally, I was like, man, what if, because we don't get to see much of Jana in action, you know? But just think about how she could end up with a whole company of, troopers who follow her.
Yeah. We know that.
To overcome the indoctrination, not just one person, but a company to follow her. There has to be something incredible about her to do that, right? To inspire that sort of following. And I just think backwards, to what she might have been like, as a trooper during training. So originally I was like, man, it would be cool if Jana was like tapped to become like a death trooper. Like she showed such great violent talent from such an early age that if she could be molded the right way, she'd make a great like death trooper. And that's the thought that I have in mind as I'm writing the story. Like, I don't, we ended up not totally putting that in, but we did have Phasma tap her to work together, which means that Phasma recognized something within her, that she could become a weapon of Phasma. And I think you get to see these moments of Jana just being awesome.
Yeah.
And you also get moments where you're inside her head and you realize what it's costing her. And that warring, that juxtaposition of being a talented weapon and being incredibly mentally empathetic to the destruction she's causing. Like, we open with her being, reliving trauma, and we see that trauma show up and the things that she was asked to do that she did. It recurs throughout the book, and just being able to sort of play with, because we know what Finn's moment of where it's like, I'm done, I can't do this. We see it. We see it happening in some of the opening sequences of The Force Awakens, right? We don't see that with Jana. We hear about it. We sort of, she tells us a little bit about it. We get a blip. I remember looking in, on Wikipedia. I remember, looking through the encyclopedia, the visual encyclopedia, trying to figure out Ansett Island. What can I have more about that? And there's nothing. And I'm realizing that's a terrible thing and a wonderful thing.
Yes.
Because I get to sort of create that, right?
Yeah.
Which is wonderful and also immensely frightening. And so I look at, I'm like, what does that look like? What leads? And you're working backwards. You're like, if this is the fulcrum, if this is the tipping point, how do we get there? What sequence of events pushes us there, right? And really, it's like, you have to know that I say the Empire, the First Order doesn't care if you live or die. You have to make that, it's one thing to say, yes, I'm going to die for the First Order. But if they don't care if you die, and if they're the ones who do it, and if the reason they're doing it makes no difference in the grand scheme of things to whether the mission is accomplished or not, you're just a cheap bundle of flesh that'll be thrown away. Like, once you make that connection and you're pushed to that, that's the moment that becomes the fulcrum that tips over to defection and everything. And so being able to write that, I had so much fun writing Jana, because we had a framework for Finn. We sort of know who Finn was. We knew his personality, but writing Jana was really like, I had a prompt, and then I could just flesh everything out from there.
I could see how that would be terrifying, but Yeah, but you killed it, man.
Yeah,
I
it was
mean,
beautifully
awesome.
woven and organically, done to get her to that place. And the internal thought, that you provided also, I think, did a great job of sort of like showing us who she is as she's getting there, as she's becoming more of a leader. Really, really, yeah. Jana was like a standout character in this book, and I almost am hopeful that we get a Jana standalone book or like more Jana stories in the future.
That would be so cool. I think that would be. Again, I love the crevices and the creases. Like, I feel like we could have a whole story about the merchant uprising. We can have a whole. We still haven't delved into the early days of post Ansett Island. Like, all right, we rebelled, but what now?
Right.
How do we survive? How do we kind of, get rid of a decade of first order indoctrination and habits? You know what I mean? Like, there's so much there that I hope is explored more, whether I do it or whether someone else does it. I think the potential is definitely there.
Yeah. It's a character that needs more exploration. Like we're 7 years out right now.
2019. Yeah. So
7 years. And I was just, I was checking, I checked before, apart from, the movie and your book, like she pops up in one Tales from the Dark Death Star comic, right? Like that's it. And like, fascinating, right? It's such an interesting character, and we haven't had really any exploration until you. And so, wonderful job on it. And it's like one of those things where a super interesting character in that movie that I didn't have much thoughts on other than interesting character. And then now, similar to other books we've read or other things, like one of my standout characters now. I'm like, yes, I need more of this, please. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about like a bunch of low-hanging fruit, that J.J. Abrams likes to leave, a bunch of mystery boxes there. And he sort of left the one where it's like, oh, are we going to see Jana and Lando gallivanting around the galaxy, searching for her parents or her past and stuff. But after something like this is like so meatier, there's so much more to sink your teeth in. And just listening to you draw that line from, these very small things you have to be like, how do I get to an uprising it's pretty amazing, man. You did a fabulous job. And
Thank you.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, I always think they did 40 stories for all these compilations, but that they had to be fishing for new authors, right? Like they had to be sort of like, well, all right, we got a lot of young talented people out there, and we want to bring them in. And so I'm really glad they grabbed you there. All right, I want to get a little dorkier here for a second. How much time did you spend imagining what you would see inside of a First Order trooper helmet? Like HUD.
I think if I'm recalling correctly, I think this is one of the areas where I had to get pulled back a little bit within the book, because the technology, it's like Star Wars technology is like retro tech a little bit. You know what I mean? Like even though we're cruising through hyperspace and we're have all of these, deflector shields and everything, the tech level is still sort of retro, you know what I mean? Just because of when the story was created, right? And so I had to keep that. I had to be informed that I had to keep that in mind, because I'm having like all sorts of, 3D, imaging happening as we're looking through the helmet. We're getting pings. I'm thinking it's like it's Battlefield or Call of Duty,
right?
Yeah,
is what I originally was like. Yeah, absolutely. We got friend to foe identifiers. We got LiDAR. We got image. All of this, and they're like, great. Hone it down. Dial it back. You know what I mean? Couple decades. So it was really cool. I walk around with when I go do my school visits, I have a replica stormtrooper helmet that's like, it's like 2 steps above like really authentic. It doesn't have like the comm system or anything, but it's the right weight and the right fit and everything. And so I would just put it on sometimes. And if you remember The Force Awakens, when we first see Rey after she's done eating and she just puts on the pilot helmet,
Yep.
And just sits there kind of. That was me. I would just, just be in the middle of the day. I just put the helmet on and be like, what can I see? Like my peripheral is a little shoddy, depth perception is, so like, and then if we have all of these indicators popping up, it could be mass confusion. So it was a fun thought exercise to run through, to be like, what does that actually look like? I mentioned the mantras earlier. One of my favorite parts of the book is when they get dressed in the beginning.
Yes.
When they're putting on all of their armor pieces and everything as they're listening to the mantras. Like, that's a lot.
It's a lot. And it's kind of the reverse of Finn taking all of it off.
Exactly.
In the beginning. Yeah. Really, really cool. I'm so glad you said that, because that's exactly how I imagine you, just like in the helmet, just being like spending time there and like thinking about it. And it was so clever to have the private comm channel, because it's like we always see these troopers just like lined up in rows, not saying anything, but it's like, oh, now you can have them have like secret conversations. And that was really fun to get, literally into the heads, into the helmets of all the characters.
Again, these are kids. A lot of these are teens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're going to have their private channels where they're just, shooting the breeze. They're going to have their quote unquote, their group chats, where they're commiserating and everything, and thinking about, again, this is technically, this is a young adult, a book for teens. And so it's like, well, what does that look like? This is what they're doing in real life. What does that look like, in the Star Wars galaxy, 4 16-year-olds talking about having to be on garbage compactor duty and scraping the walls and everything, just
we talk a lot on this pod about and I always the like young adult like tier novels, and I mean we talk about it as kind of pure Star Wars, because Star Wars is for kids, and a lot of times I think like sort of Claudia Gray, where like Lost Stars sort of set a new benchmark when that came out. Everyone's like, you can do that with a young adult novel. And that's sort of, and then it sort of jumped off from there, and all the people got in there. So I mean, it just felt so real. It has these, mature things. We get a dark Finn making a tough decision. I mean, he's got a body count in this book, which is pretty tough. So it's very mature. I'm actually kind of curious about what you think about that, as sort of because you seem to be able to put yourself in the mind of a teenager very easily. Do teenagers want a mature content to sort of aspire to? Like, when I get older, or I feel older because I am dealing with adult themes now, or slightly more mature themes in a novel, or, we think about like how much violence is in the original Star Wars trilogy, and, it was scary, and then there's monsters, and there was, all those sort of things. Like, is that something you think about when you're writing, this novel? Or
so you are constantly weighing on quote unquote what's appropriate. Maturity is can cast a wide net, because we don't, as a society, we have very few qualms with violence, but romantic maturity, is something that's, very, very taboo, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I have kids, I have a 15 and 17-year-old, are my two oldest ones. And so, I'm front and center for what they're doing, what they're going through, the changes, having to be juggling being more responsible while also still having to answer to, other authority figures, and sort of kind of like rebelling against that. Right. And so as I'm writing the book, I'm thinking about, I mean, you have this natural sort of quote unquote authority figure in the First Order, the rules they have to follow, the orders they have to follow that they march to, right? They have the Sergeant Onatha, who's sort of like the slovenly, sleeping on the job sergeant who they still have to answer to because he's an authority figure, right? And how they, there's subtle little, not rebellion, but there's subtle ways to be stubborn in the presence of such figures, right? So it's a constant, it's a constant recognition that you have to give them agency. You have to give these characters goals to move for, while also recognizing that this is a young adult book. It's a book for teens, and there are things that teens can't do because they're quote unquote not adults, right? And how does that translate to Star Wars? For Finn, there was one driving sort of motivator that I kept in the back of mind when I was writing Finn's parts, because I didn't have as much leeway to be creative with his backstory, because we sort of, we had that framework and it was sort of more established, right? But the moment in The Force Awakens when he has the chance to, who's he speaking with? He's speaking with Lupita Nyong'o's character.
Maz Kanata.
Maz, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
He's speaking to her and says, you have no idea what I'm capable of, right? And that moment, I'm like, there's something there. There's a weight there, right? From what we've seen, Finn is, from there to that point, Finn has had his moments, but nothing that imparts that gravitas that statement warrants, which means there's something that happens before that, right? And so again, something that I had some constraints that I had with Finn is that the mission that he goes on at the beginning of The Force Awakens is technically his first mission. So he can't go on other missions the way that Jenna has. And so we have to be creative. We're like, okay, well, what if this is an off the books training exercise or whatever, right? That he goes on with this other, his sort of rival trooper.
Right.
So you have to think, I have to think about that. And again, he doesn't defect here. He defects in The Force Awakens. So he can be pushed close to the edge, but maybe it reframes something. Maybe he says, I'm going to be a different leader than the ones who I've encountered so far, right? I'm going to lead these, slip and nines from, the short story. I'm going to lead them. I'm going to be their big brother. I'm going to show them the way, right? And then we get into The Force Awakens. One of them dies in his arms, and he's like, I can't. I have nothing. You know what I mean?
Brutal.
So then it was like, take him up to the fulcrum, take him up to the tipping point, but you're going to see the rest of it happens in The Force Awakens, but do it from the mind of a teen rebelling against authority, and see where that takes you.
No, I love it. I think Finn is possibly my favorite character in the sequel trilogy. I mean, these two know it. My dog's name is FN2187, but we call him Finn for short. Literally, that's on his adoption paperwork. And so just anytime I get to read more and reading over that, I had those same thoughts of just like, you have these guardrails, right, that you have to operate in. And it was just still given so much depth and connected. I had kind of maybe a strange follow-up question, looking ahead to possible guardrails coming out of episode 9, which is, it's heavily implied in episode 9. I mean, confirmed that he has force abilities, right? And you're the first book to really take it a little bit past that moment. And were you tempted to put that in? Did you want to put it in? Was it just something that we were going to deal with later? I'm just so curious about that, if you don't mind speaking to that.
I thought about it. I thought about it a lot. I was like, I had possible ideas of Finn finding the kids at the beginning of the story in the that were rescued via his force sensitivity, right? Like hearing that or whatever. The thing I kept running up against is that requires I feel like it requires a lot of care. Like it requires a lot of space. That's a story in and of itself.
Yeah.
And I thought about like, are there moments I could put in the flashbacks where it's like that alludes to it? And at the end of it, I decided not to, just because again, I was like, I don't want to cram this in. You know, I don't want to, because we have 3 timelines.
Yeah.
Technically, you know, we have Finn past timeline, we have Jana's past timeline, and we have Koi's present day timeline.
Right.
You know, Koi isn't going to recognize any of the sensitivities that Finn has. There's no room for it in Jana, so that means I have like 10 chapters to put some stuff in for Finn while still exploring, you know, this other backstory for him. So at the end of it, I was like, you know what, I'm going to leave it to someone, whether it's myself or someone else, who can do full justice to that. And maybe it's not something that needs to, because another thing I thought about was like, what if we couldn't recognize that because of the indoctrination? Like, what if, you know, would we be able to recognize those sensitive moments, or have we been brainwashed so thoroughly that emotion, that connection to others, we're like, no, that is my dedication to the First Order. That is, you know what I mean? Like this is what's pulling me here. This is my desire to make sure I'm upholding, my desire to be a good squad mate, teammate, what have you.
That's a fascinating angle. I feel like the suppression of almost the Force sensitivity is really interesting angle. That I don't know if we've seen that, or read or seen that before.
Yeah,
I want to. You mentioned guardrails, Adam, and I want to. And you mentioned a very specific one that was a pain in my butt. Okay, your dog is named FN2187.
Yeah,
and you call him Finn.
Yep,
Finn is a name that was assigned in The Force Awakens.
Right.
He did not have that name, so we could use that name in the present day part of the story. In the flashbacks, we could not use that. And I'm saying FN2187 over and over. And again, for Jana, TZ, I think it's 1719.
Yep.
You know, again, I think that was the biggest sticky point in this, and not like one person wanted one way or you have to do it this way, but just all of us collectively thinking like this is annoying, having to repeat the call sign over and over, you know, FN218, like having to put that in, you know, quotations in dialogue over and over was so frustrating. So like that was one of the bigger constraints that we had to work around, was because that's what they would do, but we had to figure out what would make it easy on the reader and the narrator as they are moving through the story, so it's not just over and over, just this huge mouthful of call signs, because again, we're surrounded by troopers, and that's all they do, that's all they call each other, and so not everyone has a wonderful nickname, you know, like Nines or Slip or anything like that. So sometimes, you know, I can get away with 8-7, you know, from time to time. Clamps, you know, which was a, you know, shout out to one of my favorite shows, Futurama, where I was wondering.
Okay. My God, I never put that together. Clamps. I'm just thinking clamps. I just can picture him now. That's great.
Yeah, but the nomenclature was one of the bigger sticking points for all of us, me and the editors, just trying to figure out what's the best way to tell a story with all of this.
Really fun.
Yeah, that's great.
I have one for you. So you invented a few new types of First Order troopers in this book. Did you employ Doug Chang and his team or his department to draw you up some concept art just because you could? Shroud, maybe? Like, or did you just do this all in your head? Because I would definitely just like want to see some of that concept art if I could.
It was just all, it was in my head, man. I wish I had great. One of my favorite things about Star Wars and some of the more recent shows, at the end when they're doing the credits, and you see some of that. I think The Mandalorian was really big for this, where you see that concept art at the end. It's one of the reasons why I started, trying to teach myself to draw over the last year or so, just to have that sort of frame of reference for myself, the visual imagery. But yeah, Shroud,
Mountain Trooper, Finn.
Does Major Goal have? Does his attire look different? I think
he's got like a teal uniform, right?
Yeah, and I was following the footprints of like a Phasma or a Cardinal, where they have these visual markers to distinguish them from sort of, again, the objective of the First Order with the uniformity, right? I'm trying to think of
the Death Troopers. I think were a little different, because I don't know if you ever saw Death Troopers in the First Order specifically. That was kind of a new one. There are just a few designs, and you described them beautifully, and I could picture them in my mind. But I'm like, oh man, is somewhere like taped to your wall? Did you get someone to?
Dude, I wish I had this blurred out because my office is a mess. But I have on a shelf right here. I have all of these little Stormtrooper figurines, like the different types, and there's some from Clone Wars era. But I have like the Snow Trooper, I have the First Order Trooper, I have different guards, and I think I have pilots and stuff. And so I would look at them and sort of like kind of extrapolate out or piece together, like take bits of armor here from there, sort of come up with what I was thinking about. I would have my my visual encyclopedias out.
Yep.
Trying to, again, like, oh well, if this looks like this and this looks like this, well maybe this trooper would sort of resemble, this way or whatever.
Cool.
Which again was a fun little thought experiment to run through.
Yeah, it was
music
awesome.
to my ears. I collect trooper action figures only. Specifically for like the helmet designs, and I love McQuarrie sort of helmet design from way back. And to me, that really is sort of distinguishes each sort of story in Star Wars is the helmets, and it's even how they start the episodes on Disney Plus now. It's kind of crazy. I was really wanted to know about the major difference between Finn and Jannah and writing each character, and if Jannah's a little bit more of a serious character, talking about her being more of an elite soldier, going on a few more missions than Finn, and Finn being maybe not as seasoned, or like just sort of
Jannah's definitely more experienced, and also more of a leader. And again, because I have to think about extrapolating backwards from where she ends up. Again, she's in charge of a company, that defects with her. How? She has to have some leadership qualities, right? And so really the story is showing how she keeps this disparate group of, again, teenagers operating together. And that was a really fun dynamic, creating, the lethal but loyal sharpshooter, the loyal muscle and Clamps, and then sort of the newcomer, the tech guy, in 12. It just being able to think about the group dynamics and how Jannah keeps them all together and operating as a team, and how she refuses to lose one of her team because of what has happened in the past. And Finn is more, Finn has a personal goal, Finn is more individual, and part of his journey is learning how to work with someone who he dislikes, or working with someone, period, which I think is a crucial part of his journey. Again, showing him moving from that individual goal and mindset to where he can work with a Poe, work with a Rey, and have some of that social aspect to lean back on from what he learned as a trooper. But yeah, with Jannah, it was how can I show, and we really see it. We see some of it, when she confronts the pirates and rescues, but you really see it towards the end, as we're moving into the Ansett Island, climax, right? Where she's able to, you see her moves and her fluidity, and her deadliness, as she is rescuing someone that she cares for. And I think that's what's core to Jana's personality, that she's a leader who refuses to leave, her team behind. And again, that just carries everything forward to where we end up with her in episode 9.
That was such a great punctuation mark on her character when you changed perspective. I think it was to 12 or
we had to fight to keep that one in there.
It's so good because it's just like Jana just like casually comes in, saves the day, cold as ice. You just see how badass she is. Like from a different POV, she is a rock star, and it just puts like a little punctuation, like you've been in her head and she's here or there doing it, but it's just like to other people, it's like she's a god.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I learned that there's I think it's David Gemmell, who is a British science fiction fantasy author. And one of the things he would do is he was not afraid of giving you a random scene from a random soldier that showed how much above them the main character was. Like really giving you that awe-inspiring, like this is a force of nature that I'm encountering. And then you go back into your main character's POV and he's grumbling that his knee aches and he's old and he walked. But to these other people, he's a legend. Yeah. And so it's a bit of a disruption in like, the POVs that we have. But again, if we're going to build someone up as this really talented potential, special trooper, death trooper, tapped by Phasma, trained with Phasma, let's see what that looks like at some point. And I think having that right there at the end really was the sweet spot.
I cut you off. You said you had to fight to keep it in there.
Yeah. Again, because it's such a little bit of a jarring pattern disruptor, moving from Coy to Jana to Finn, Coy to Jana to Finn, and then we have this random 12 section. And we do that a couple times at the end because we also have Sergeant. I'm blanking on her name, but one of the second in command, and we have that whole chapter where she starts off. She's an incredibly loyal underling, and then at the end of the chapter, that foundation has shaken a bit. And it's a great way to show that if she can have her foundation shaken, imagine how these troopers might feel. And again, because we have to set the stage that a whole company is going to defect. And so we just have to be able to, this is just one effective way of displaying that.
I'm glad it survived because it's great. Yeah, or was she the second in command to Shikra the Bloodhawk?
Yeah, Calcon.
Okay.
Sergeant Calcon.
In terms of capturing character voice, which you did incredibly well for both characters, Finn and Jana, from the characters we've heard speak and seen them on screen before. Are you thinking about John Boyega and Naomi Ackie when you're writing the characters and sort of thinking about their voice, or are you sort of, this is before their scenes in the films and therefore I have a lot of I don't really have to like match their performance as much as sort of just.
Yeah, I'm thinking of less them, but more their performance. I'm thinking of their voice to try and keep that consistent, because that's not going to change too much as a person is moving through their life or whatever. Finn he's got a couple quips. He's a little, can be a little silly at times.
Yeah.
I feel like he uses humor to kind of make his way through trauma. And that's kind of how his character was used in the films as well.
That's true.
And so you have a little bit of that as he is, within the First Order. The same thing with John is, again, we're kind of working backwards, but again, because we don't get a lot of her, in the movie.
But we do get a lot of Naomi Ackie recently in film. I mean, she's been crushing it. Yeah. She's been in a bunch of movies, and they've all been awesome, and she's been incredible. You know, and so it's really easy to visualize or hear.
Yeah, with her, I feel like we have a little bit more of a clean slate to play with, especially since we have no idea. We didn't get to see her as a trooper, so we didn't know what her personality. We have a little bit of Finn, as his trauma kicks in, and so yeah, I have their faces in mind. I have them. I love the cover with them, with their helmets off, and Jenna has her short hair, and you can see the John Boyega and Finn. So I have that, and I mean, I've been a fan of. I was watching Attack the Block, as I'm writing the book, because that's a younger John Boyega, and I'm getting some of those features in mind or whatever. I have to have like images, so I'm thinking of facial expressions and everything like that. But again, it's more them in character and less them as the people that they are.
Very cool. Cool. I could definitely. It was very easy to visualize the book as I was reading it, because just they've been putting out stellar performances recently, and you can definitely see those characters in the chapter, the flashback chapters, and it's just remarkable. And so I loved reading the book, and it was really easy to just see those scenes with them. So great job.
Cool. All right, I have one. So I have to know. I have to ask you, what's it like working with the story group? It sounds like you have your team with your editor, and then I imagine you get called out to Northern California, and there's a darkly lit room with like red lights, and then there's like a figure in like a velvet robe. You can only see the bottom half of his face, and it's Pablo Hidalgo. And you bring your ideas, and then he sort of brings edicts. Everyone else is normal. There's just, like a receptionist that brings you like a cup of water, but that's where Pablo Hidalgo lives. Am I right?
I've never been. We were virtual when we met, which is still
pretty cool,
fantastic, really cool. Really amazing. I think one of my great feelings of accomplishment is the from a certain point of view, the ha 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 with the pasty sand wizard, and then in the last order I got two nice comments from Pablo Hidalgo. One, when Jana first picks the flower, and we find out what the name of the flower is at the beginning, and then at the end when she sees the flower again and she has to pick a name. And I just, I had those nice, little comments in Word from Pablo. And I'm like, yes. Yes.
Oh man, that must have been so satisfying. Yeah. And I think that's probably a lot of understatement there too. You did such a fantastic job here. I'm sorry to make you uncomfortable as we're gushing, but we love this very much. I think this is great. I think we should put a button on it. Otherwise, we could talk to you probably for the rest of our lives. But what are you working on now? What are you have Last Gate of the Emperor is out there, which is a more of a fantasy series, and Jax Freeman is another series of yours. Are you working on those? What's next for you?
I have a few projects right now. We're wrapping up the Jack series. Book 3, I'm literally editing it right now.
Cool.
That should come out at the end of this year. I co-wrote a young adult rom-com with one of my good friends, Aaron and Trotta Kelly. Book 1 came out last year. We're working on a companion novel for that, which is just really fun. Again, leaning into, I never thought I would write YA. I thought I was like a middle grade and then an adult writer. But leaning into like just the awkward teen boy experience. So not the jock, but the comic book collector, the Star Wars nerd, the video game enthusiast, like leaning into that character has really resonated with me for some weird reason. Who knows?
Okay.
So working on that. Working on a book for younger readers, second, third grade. A heavily illustrated book, so something along the lines of like a Diary of a Wimpy Kid, something to have to read, to I choose to read, and the gap that can really form there. So trying to tackle that by putting some really fun robots and aliens projects together, little light sci-fi, for the young ones, little no hard theory of relativity, science fiction, just a little,
How does a hyperdrive work?
Exactly. Gotta get them started. Yep.
Start the slippery slope to Adrian Tchaikovsky or something, just get them gradually.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's great. Well, sounds like you're a busy man. Really excited to talk to you. This has been great, man. Thanks for being so generous with your time and your knowledge. And can't wait to see the next thing you're coming out with. And we'll hope to see a new Star Wars penned by you soon. Because this was a fantastic ride.
Yeah,
I'd love to do
please.
that. I'd love that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Great.
Always fun to nerd out
thanks
about
everyone.
one of my
We'll talk to
favorite
you next
topics.
week
And
on Cantina
maybe we got to do
Chronicles.
this again at some point.